You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times Channel 101, Freak TV Channel 703, GSTV Channel 419, and Go TV Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles: Twitter at NTA News 24, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions, and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers. NTA News 24, news and more news.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, our second topic for discussion this morning is on human rights and national development ahead of the 2019 Human Rights Summit taking place here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital territory. We'd like to, at this time, welcome our four guests here with us in the studios. First, Mr. Tony Ojukwu is the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Mr. Ojukwu, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Kingsley.
Good Morning Nigeria. Also here with us in the studios, Frank Tietie is Executive Director of Citizens Advocacy and Social and Economic Rights, CASA. Frank, pleasure to have you with us right here in the studios. Also here, Professor Deji Adekunle, former Director General, Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. Pleasure to have you with us on the program. Thank you. Okay. And last but not the least, Abdulrahman Yakubu, who is a Director in the Human Rights Commission and also Chairman of the Local Organizing Committee for the 2019 National Human Rights Summit. Yakubu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning.
Okay, gentlemen, it's good to have you this morning to take a closer look at what human rights is all about with respect to, of course, the summit that is coming. But I'd like us to please try from definition aspect of human rights before we delve into the summit that is being expected. Human rights has been described variously or defined variously by various governments and world bodies across the globe. What may be a human right to a particular system may not be for another system. But is there any uniformity when we talk about human rights? And I'd like Abdulrahman to start this conversation. What really does human rights connote? When does one right start and stop? And when does another right begin?
Thank you very much. There is a universal concept of human rights because human rights itself are universal. And what they simply means is legal entitlements of all human beings, irrespective of creed, ethnicity, and any other status. And in the human rights community, we say human rights are interrelated, they are interdependent, and they are intertwined, which means that all human rights are on equal footing: civil, economic, social, political. And which means that they are not entitlements given to human beings by the state, but they are naturally given by God. So they are entitlements that every human being is entitled to have, and nobody can take this right from that human being, even though there are circumstances where some rights can be restricted in the interest of public safety and public morality.
All right, thank you very much, Abdulrahman Yakubu, for that definition. We won't get into the history now of the origin of the natural rights perspective, natural law perspective to human rights. Thanks a lot. But Mr. Tony Ojukwu, of course, who is the Executive Secretary of the Human Rights Commission, and therefore, shall we say, the custodian of human rights in the country. What is the state of human rights?
Well, the state of human rights in Nigeria, I think, is improving because when you look at the state of human rights, you have to look at where are we coming from. You know, we've had a long history of military rule before we have democratic governance. And at least today it can be said that Nigeria is one of the freest countries in the world because Nigerians are free to express themselves. In the commission, we have noticed that the awareness level has gone so high that you can't believe it that in a year we get up to 1 million complaints on human rights violations. It doesn't mean that there are more violations now than there were before, but what it means is that people now know how to demand for their rights. They ask questions, they complain about government activities, they complain about law enforcement agents, but during the military regime then, these are things people had accepted as they had no choice. So the awareness level is high and the consciousness of human rights in the country is quite high now.
Okay, which leads us naturally to the next question. Professor Deji Adekunle, former Director General of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, still on the issue of the state of human rights. How are we enjoying human rights in Nigeria?
Well, in varied forms. As the ES said, you have increased awareness now. Awareness actually is also motivated by outcomes, you know, so people won't go there if they had not been saying that some complaints were being resolved. So it's actually action, engagement and action. We have provisions in the Constitution, we have provisions in the African Charter that citizens are entitled to, but these provisions will just be dry bones if you didn't have institutions like the Human Rights Commission, like members of civil society, engaging government, engaging institutions. Mind you, it's not just government, even private persons can infringe the rights of others. So these are actors that have to be engaged, that have to be brought to toe the line of the universal standards that Mr. Yakubu mentioned, in order to see that what is provided in the Constitution peters down as concrete actions and rights for the Nigerian people.
All right. Thank you. Frank Tietie is the Executive Director, Citizens Advocacy and Social and Economic Rights case. Let's get your own perspective as to the human rights situation, not just in Nigeria, but globally, as of course, as it concerns the United Nations Human Rights Instrument.
Okay, thank you. Human rights have been evolving. And even we as a country, we've made tremendous progress, just like the Executive Secretary has said. But I must say, with this kind of opportunity, that we have the best human rights regime in the world, about the best, Nigeria. And it's something that we must use to market ourselves. And I'm talking about at the international level. Go to the United Nations Human Rights Council, for example, and compare the kind of regime we operate in Nigeria, which says, where you can engage in third-party enforcement of rights. Nothing can be better. People like us are now into human rights simply because the atmosphere in Nigeria, the legal environment in Nigeria, is so supportive of the enforcement of the realization of human rights. It doesn't matter what the enforcers do, because what it means, because naturally power has a way of making people to take the shortcuts. And that's why you find out that we have problem with law enforcement. But gradually, with the kind of work, with the kind of human rights education that the National Human Rights Commission is engaging surreptitiously, imperceptibly, you find there's a changing mindset, even in the law enforcement. So things will improve. Now, when you look at that kind of regime, coupled with the fact that the National Human Rights Commission Act was even amended to further empower the National Human Rights Commission to the point of adjudicating immediately, quickly on certain kind of human rights infringements, portends a lot of hope for us as a country. And that's why in civil society, we keep, this kind of human rights campaign for the increase, the understanding, the consciousness of human rights among Nigerians. And in that regard, we keep telling people that the hope of this country, it doesn't matter what all these politicians do and whatever. It doesn't matter what the mistakes that happen in but the hope for this country is in greater realization of human rights. The world respects us. It doesn't matter whether we have pockets of human rights violations that are accentuated beyond dimension. However, when they look at the structure, the legal structure, the world has a lot of respect for Nigeria in terms of human rights.
Frank, thank you very much for that perspective. Tony Ojukwu, I want to come back to you. Following from the picture painted by Frank, how do we look at abuse of human rights in Nigeria? Citizen abuse of their own rights and government institutions abuse of the rights of citizens. Is it necessarily a case that sometimes our fundamental rights are over-enlarged, which becomes a license to lawlessness?
Well, the fundamental rights cannot be over-enlarged because these are rights that inherit you because you're a human being. But it is very, very important in development that human beings are allowed to exercise their rights, because power has a way of corrupting. And the tendency for power is to restrict people's rights. But like has been pointed out, our constitution is very strong on rights. And also, there are a lot of supporting documents, a lot of supporting instruments which have been passed into law, which help Nigerians to exercise their rights. And the consciousness is there because you must continue to exercise your freedom. And the greatest instrument for protection of your rights is awareness. You know, if you don't know your rights, you can't even ask for it. You presume that it is a normal thing, and people oppressing you and sitting on you. Nigeria is touted to be one of the freest countries in the world. I just came back from Egypt and I couldn't make internet calls from my hotel. And when I asked, they said, no, you can't do that here. You can only send text. You know, but this is where we are even talking of how to deal with social media issues and so on and so forth. So the point is Nigerians can express themselves, and when their rights are trampled upon, they can speak, they can talk. Even the media is very free in this country. I know there are one or two issues, challenges between law enforcement agencies and the media, but people have also risen up to fight for them, to talk for them. Even where court orders have been disobeyed, we have said they cannot do that. So there's this constant tension between law enforcement agents that want to restrict the rights of Nigerians and the fight back from civil society. So there's that constant exchange, and that's a display of freedom.
But that's why I asked the question. Any of the other guests could take this up, either Frank or Professor Adekunle. Look, you were using the example of Egypt versus Nigeria, and we can categorize that under our own chapter for freedom of expression. But that is where some persons have complaints about how we over-enlarge our rights to freedom of expression to now, begin to get into, as some persons would obviously recognize, reckless utterances and all kinds of claims and calls. That's why I asked the question, are we as citizens over-enlarging some of our rights? Professor Adekunle first.
Yeah, normally as individuals, there can be tendencies to exceed bounds. So even under the Constitution, there are limitations to certain rights, what they call derogations or exemptions. Now, these limitations, however, have been carefully prescribed to ensure that the rule of law governs. So limitations have to be framed in form of a law, democratically passed, and reasonable and justified in a democratic society. These are the standards. So we do have laws like that. You say you're exercising your human rights. For instance, you don't want noise. Maybe you have someone making too much noise in your house, and you go to that person's house and you, for instance, tape the, tape the mouth of the infant making noise. Yeah, so you are infringing on not only on the rights of that family, you are also committing a crime under law. So it's a very organic framework. That's the point I made about engagement. It's an organic framework. And what Frank had said earlier is that in this country, the formal institution, that's the Human Rights Commission, actually enjoys a very good relationship with civil society. It has an enlarged mandate. Hitherto, it used to be courts, go to courts, or access ombudsman, or access the institution. Now the Human Rights Commission can actually adjudicate, mediate, intervene, call people together, and in fact issue orders and directives for compliance.
All right.
Yes, you're going to ask.
Yes, I wanted to.
No, just hold on a second. I will yield for you to ask a question. But you see, the great irony is that the Human Rights Commission was created by the military regime.
All right.
That was because of pressure from international.
You see, when we started, my first question was where does the right start and where does it end? And where does another person's right begin? Right? I like the illustration you gave, Prof. But I want to get back to Tony Ojukwu before we come to you. The reason being that the naturality of human right, as it were, made it to be fundamental. Right, and we have all agreed here that Nigeria is free. It's one of the freest country, in the world. And you gave an instance, of what happened to you in Egypt. You equally get that in other countries like China and so on, which they are using to, checkmate hate speech and what have you. But the Transparency International does not agree with the fact that Nigeria is the freest country in the world in terms of human rights.
You say Transparency International or Amnesty?
No, Amnesty International, yes.
That is part of the freedom here. You are entitled to air your own view. And that's the display of the freedom here. The exercise of your human rights in Nigeria is unquestionable. Nigerians have the freedom to exercise their rights, and where it is trampled upon, your ability to make a complaint or talk about it is the issue. As long as human life is, people will overstep bounds, people will trample on others, but is there the framework, is there the environment for you to challenge that? That is where we say that there's freedom. Because there are some places where you cannot even, you will see a right being trampled upon, and you can't even talk, you can't even express it. There are mechanisms here, there are places to go. Even if you go to one place and they don't give you what you want, you have another place to go. There's so many avenues, and that is why we feel that no matter what, there's a lot of framework, there's a lot of environment, the climate for you to realize your rights in Nigeria is quite expansive.
What are earlier you talked about the commission getting up to, shall we say, 1 million complaints. What are the most complaints that you receive?
I would say that most of the complaints are in the area of women and children, and family issues. It's obvious because these are related to economic situation in the country, And then you also have, in the area of social and economic rights, issues about employment, issues about health, issues about poverty, and so on and so forth. And then there's the basic one, which is on civil and political rights, law enforcement agents, and so on and so forth. But the highest number of, in fact, if I get 100 complaints in a day, almost 50 will be on women and children and vulnerable groups.
Okay.
No. What is the nature of, those women and children? What are the issues in general?
You have domestic violence issues. You have provision for children. You have issues about necessaries. You have issues about providing accommodation for the family, paying the children's school fees.
Yeah, necessaries
Yes.
for our viewers to understand that. You know, there are always reports we read from our newspaper review sessions where a man will have triplets or quadruplets, and then the man takes off.
All right, let's come to Abdulrahman once more. We are looking forward to having a human rights summit. All right, tell us more about it and what likely going to be takeaways from that summit. What is it all about?
Thank you very much. The Human Rights Summit is Nigeria's response to some of the recommendations made by the UN Human Rights Council during Nigeria's Universal Periodic Review. So the Council has felt that Nigeria should have a national, institutionalized a platform where human rights situation can be discussed, and the government supported that recommendation. So that is why the National Human Rights Commission feels that it is important to bring all stakeholders together: government, the executive, the parliament, the judiciary, the civil society, the media, the academia, and all other opinion leaders in the country to be able to come together and discuss, just as we are doing here now, but that will be a larger discussion where the various sectors of society will be involved. And at the end of the day, the summit is also an opportunity for stakeholders to set agenda for government. So an annual agenda. It will be an annual review of the human rights situation in the country, and also an agenda setting on how Nigerians want the human rights to be in the country. That is the...
All right. What other details are there about the summit?
The summit is going to come up on Sunday and Monday. The Sunday is the opening ceremony, a high-level opening ceremony where all MDAs are expected, to participate. And also, after that high-level opening ceremony, there will be a Human Rights Award for deserving Nigerians. The award is coming in about 6 different categories for individuals, for state governments, for CSOs, for multinational corporations, and also private institutions who have contributed immensely.
But what is the mechanism for determining who will win this?
Thank you very much. Yes, the mechanism is that some names were thrown up by the local organizing committee in these different categories, and the public, were requested to vote. And this voting was done through the social media platform.
Right.
And the outcome, was generated from, the opinions of Nigerians with respect to those that deserve these awards.
Okay, thank you very much, Abdulrahman, for that explanation. Frank, you've been itching to get back into the conversation. I just wondered, one area, you spoke glowingly earlier about the human rights situation in the country, but tell us, from your practice of human rights litigation, what is the state of our human rights jurisprudence? And that's, in answering that question, I would also like you to link it up to the ability of a claimant who succeeds to actually collect. Because there were reports in the past of a number of government agencies, particularly either the military or the police, having judgment debts rising to hundreds of millions of naira.
Actually, it is the primary responsibility of government to enforce human rights, and also to see to it that the citizens that they have, sworn to protect before the international community, they actually do that. So it's a government responsibility. For those of us in civil society, what we do is supposed to be a form of prescriptive criticism, not a destructive one. That is, criticism that is based on obligations that the government itself has already, signed up to before the international community. So a lot depends on the good intention of the government. And so that's a primary issue with government. And sometimes I'm happy with what has happened, transpired with regards to Shawari, for example. Human beings who man institutions can make mistakes. They can be defiant because they sometimes overemphasize the kind of power that they wield. But when they get punished, for example, by a fine of 100,000, and the DSS makes the effort quickly to pay that fine, it shows that we're heading in a direction that we're supposed to see. Now, we also know judgment enforcement orders. And citizens must learn to try and levy accounts of the police, for example. If you have a judgment, you're going to levy it, go to court, get an order to attach the account of the police with the CBN. And then, until the point where if the CBN does not obey an order of court, or if the police does not obey an order of court, the courts will now say, look, we will not entertain, we will not even recognize the authority of the police anymore. The police cannot try that. So citizens must understand that inherent within the law, inherent within the administration of criminal justice is the ability for the courts to enforce the judgment even against the highest authority of the land, the president. But you don't need to enforce laws against the police. The police enforces laws. So when the court says, police, you have been fined 100 million, the police should make haste to go and pay because it has to set example for the people that it wants to follow the law. Finally, what is right, and that's why we call them rights. What is wrong is wrong. So you cannot, on the basis of human rights, begin to commit a crime just because you have free speech. So you now make speeches that incite, that is a crime. That's not human right. That is wrong. So what we emphasize is what is right. And those things have not only been God-given, they are embedded in our laws. And the government has sworn. In fact, it is the government that funds the National Human Rights Commission primarily for the purpose of promoting and then observing and enforcing human rights. So the whole system is built around the welfare of the people.
You've made one comment earlier on here where it is listed that the irony of it is that the Human Rights Commission was created by the military, but certainly not to enforce it as it were that period.
It was under General Sunday Abacha and Professor Awalu Yadudu, who was special advisor, of course, a professor of law.
Advantage of that. And the law has now been amended, and a lot of strength has been thrown into the commission.
Now, Tony Ojukwu, do you have any challenges? Well, let's share in the challenges of National Human Rights Commission.
Well, the challenges are enormous. First, this country is a very huge country, really. For instance, we have offices now in the 36 states. Before my administration, we had about 23 states, but now we've tried to make sure that every state at least has a place where the citizens can go and, complain if their rights are violated. So, but you can even see that having one office in a state that there has 30 local governments, a state like Kano that has 40-something local governments, how many people can move from their villages to the state capital? Human rights is something which even every local government should have an office. So that's the challenge. So the only way we try to deal with that is through medium like this that can reach through medium like that can reach as many people. But you can see how many people are watching television this morning to hear what we are going to say. So that has its own limitation.
We have millions of viewers all around.
We have 200 million Nigerians. They cannot be watching television every morning. Probably 10 million will watch. And then what of
more than 10 million.
It's a 20 million will watch.
More than 20 million. All right, Tony Ojukwu, just million all around the world. I mean, it's the internet-enabled platforms, make it possible, for us to be watched. And those, of course, who are not able to watch now can always download it from YouTube. Every day, full program at the end of the program. One point I would like you to also speak to. Yes, you have spread out in terms of your presence around the country, but your powers have also been enlarged on account of the amendment to the Principal Act. Now, what is the redress procedure? Because you are serving now almost as a quasi-court.
The complaint treatment mechanism is one that has a component of fair hearing, because you must hear two sides before you can arrive at any decision. So that's a majority of the cases are like that. Once there's a complaint, the next thing we do is we consider, first of all, is it a right issue? Because at times it's not everything that comes that is a human rights issue. Once we establish that it's a human rights issue, then we now approach the other side to hear their own side of the story, and that helps us now to take a decision. And we use mediation, arbitration, and so on and so forth. And then when we have to also do what we call public hearing, if it's a class kind of thing or it's an endemic issue, like we are doing now, sexual and gender-based violence, which is ravaging the churches, the schools, the workplaces, and so on and so forth. We are now moving around the country, having a public hearing on sexual and gender-based violence. It's something we did police on. Violations by the police were so rampant. SARS, we also carried out public hearing on that. We've submitted that report. So these are all ways we try to deal with the complaints that come to us.
Now, I think before we go, let's bring in Professor Adekunle, who is also, we understand, is a visiting research professor to the Commission. Do you think that there are laws in this country that should be amended, or additional laws that could be put in place for us to give more teeth to the Commission to function more effectively and efficiently?
No, certainly I don't think so. I think it's really the will to enforce, the will and the capacity. Capacity of even the Commission in terms of reach to the people is limited. Will on the part of government agencies is really lukewarm to enforce. So we just heard here that most times the police are at the receiving end of complaints. They are the ones complaints are usually directed. They are the ones complaints are usually against. Most times when you talk of enforcement, people say that how can the police enforce these things against itself? But the truth of the matter is that when judgments are entered against them, the will to enforce is beyond the police. It goes to the supervisory authorities. They have a police council, we have a Ministry of Finance, and we have a CBN. So when damages are ordered against the police, all the judgment creditor needs to do is approach the CBN. And,
okay, thank you, gentlemen, for really dealing with this issue decisively, if I may use the military terms. And at this note, I'd like to thank Tony Ojukwu.
Are you a detective?
No, Tony Ojukwu is Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Frank Tietie, Executive Director, Citizens Advocacy and Social and Economic Rights CASA. It's been good hearing from you this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, Professor Deji Adekunle, former Director General, Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, and of course, a visiting research professor at the Human Rights Commission. Thank you.
Thank you
for your thoughts. And Abdurrahman Yakubu, Director, Civil and Political Rights, National Human Rights Commission, and Chairman, Local Organizing Committee for the 2019 National Human Rights Summit. It's been wonderful sharing your thoughts on this edition of the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and of course, coming ahead is the next leg of our conversation that has to deal on anti-corruption in the transportation sector. That will be next. Stay with us.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times, Channel 101, Free TV, Channel 703, GSTV, Channel 419, and Go TV, Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles, Twitter at NTA News 24, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions, and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers. NTA News 24, news and more news.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, welcome back. Good morning, Nigeria. We're on the last leg. Last topic, of course, has to do with anti-corruption in the transportation subsector. The Federal Ministry of Transportation and its agencies are in collaboration with the EFCC to organize a one-day summit on zero tolerance for corruption in the transportation sector. Right here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome Mrs. Margaret Onyema Orakuse, a maritime lawyer and also a board member of the Nigerian Shippers Council, and of course, a member of the organizing committee of the summit. Mrs. Orakuse, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Also here with us in the studios is Mr. Agu Kajetan Chukwemeka, who is Director, Consumer Affairs of the Nigerian Shippers Council. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
And last but not the least is Latuna Kabir, Assistant Director of the EFCC, that's the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission.
Good morning, sir.
All right, good morning.
Okay. Gentlemen and lady, it's good to have you this morning. And we'd like to start with the lady among us, Margaret Onyema Orakuse. You know, corruption can be described in so many ways. And of course, the practice is also witnessed in so many aspects of our human life, in all strata of life, and in organizations, in bodies, and what have you. So what nature of corruption are we looking at here, and why the interest of the transportation subsector to start this in the first place?
Thank you very much. Little or nothing is actually known about the maritime sector and transportation, but it cuts across a lot of commercial activities. And that's why we decided, because a lot of activities go on, we have a lot of potentials to grow. We need to attract investors, and we also have this issue of corruption. So we want a good playing ground for investors to come in. When you talk about the maritime sector, you talk about activities in the ports, you talk about activities out there in the sea, you talk about the huge volume of exports we do and imports. And then you begin to look at it. Are we benefiting from freight? Are our banks involved in the manner in which they are supposed to be involved? The cargo dwell time, why our cargoes being diverted to neighboring countries? Is there efficiency? So these are the things that we identify and then find out why these things are not happening. And chief amongst it is corruption, because maritime is an international business, so it must have that standard, international standard. It's highly competitive also. So to attract the investors and again to enhance performance of what we have now, we have to remove this monster called corruption.
All right, thank you very much. Agu Kajetan, tell us, how, again, as my colleague Kirian asked, how does corruption manifest itself in the value chain of the, say, maritime subsector of the economy?
You are aware that
I'm not aware, just tell us.
Transportation generally is the driver of the economy. Transportation is the pivot, on top which the economy revolves. In fact, transportation drives the global trade. So whatever affects transportation affects the economy. And as my colleague mentioned, when you look at the maritime sector, you discover that there's a lot of areas that are prone to corruption. I will start with vessel reception at the port. There has been an international outcry, against the way and manners, that vessels are received at the port. These are the areas we need to beam searchlight. Then again, in the value chain, the issue of cargo examination. What happens at the point of cargo examination? This is another area. Equally, if you look at the gridlock, presently at the Lagos port, you will discover that the gridlock is a manifestation of indiscipline and corruption. So these are the areas that we equally need to beam our searchlight. And we are equally aware that this present government is hell-bent to curb corruption. The present government is hell-bent, to tackle corruption frontally. So the summit we are organizing by the Federal Ministry of Transportation and its agencies and the FCC, it is our own support to the federal government to ensure that we tackle the issue of corruption within the transportation sector, more especially the maritime sector, where we belong. Generally, our port, though there is a lot of innovation now to improve port activities, the present government has done much, but we need to do more, and the only way we can do more is ensuring that we eliminate corruption and imbibe best practices.
All right, we have just been exposed to the kind of activities that take place in the maritime sector, which for me, to me, I never came to realize, apart from what you have just told us. Let me come to the Kabir Latuna here. What kind of cases, have you been experiencing? What kind of corrupt practices, has the EFCC been able to detect along the line of value chain activities in the maritime sector? What has been your experience?
Okay, thank you very much. What a lot of people don't appreciate is that synergy between the EFCC and operators within the maritime sector did not start now. Over the years, we've had relationship with the Nigerian Customs Service, which is a vital component of the maritime sector. Sometime in the past, there was a joint operation on a port that led to substantial recovery of revenue to the federal government by importers that used to evade duties that were supposed to be paid. That was a joint operation between the Nigerian Customs Service and the FCC. Secondly, we have an ongoing operation with the Nigerian Navy, which is in charge of policing the nation's seas and is a vital component of the maritime sector. Some vessels that are engaged in illegal bunkering, dealing in petroleum without license, these are veritable areas where the country loses a substantial amount of revenue. Once the Navy arrests them, investigation and prosecution is done by the AFCC. And I can tell you that over the years, we have done a number of prosecutions, MV Asteris, and a number of other cases. And some of these vessels now, they are currently at the level where government is about to auction them for sale.
So why are you escalating collaboration with agencies in the Ministry of Transportation to a summit?
Okay, good question. When my colleague who is from the Shippers Council, was talking. She talked about the importance of that particular sector to the economy. Now you are talking about the commission, which is the coordinating agency for investigation and enforcement of economic and financial crime. Obviously, there has to be a synergy between their own body and our own body for the good of the nation. She has highlighted the issue of corruption as a major inhibiting factor to the operations of the port and the economy of the nation. So there is no better time than us and then coming together, particularly at the administration we have now, where corruption is a front burner.
Okay, Margaret, as we're about to round off now, let us know some of the most important areas of focus by this summit, that the ones that you want to address frontally for now, and what should be the takeaway being expected from this summit? What are those such takeaways will, efficiently and effectively, advance your cause in fighting corruption in the maritime subsector?
Yeah, a lot of improvement at the ports, no doubt about that, but we still need to do more. We need to do away with interfacing. We need to do away with human activities at the port. We need to introduce the technologies, automation, scanners, anything to do, because there are so many agencies that monitor the activities in the maritime sector. You can imagine when an importer's goods land and it has to go through about 26 or more agencies. Time is being wasted. A lot of resources go into, because maritime is time effective. That's the difference between a good importing or a maritime nation and us. Like our neighbors. I mean, they have improved so much. Their dwell time is about a matter of days. You can be in your office and just with technology conduct all your maritime businesses. Okay. That's where we are heading to do away with human
all right.
activities.
Again, as today is a fairly crowded day for us, but you didn't tell us who the participants at the summit most likely will be.
Okay, fine.
Very quickly.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
We have a very seasoned stakeholder in the industry, experienced. He's going to give us the lead paper. Then, of course, we have the security agencies. We have all the agencies in the maritime sector, Shippers Council, NIMASA, NPA, Ministry of Transportation, a whole lot of important people.
All right. So on that note, we'd like to thank you, Mrs. Margaret Onyema-Orakusi, maritime lawyer, and a member of the board of Shippers Council, as well as the committee organizing the one-day summit on anti-corruption in the transportation sector. Thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you for having us.
We also would like to appreciate Mr. Agu Kajet Chukwuemeka, who is a director in the Shippers Council, is in charge of consumer affairs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being around.
Thank you very much.
And last but not the least, from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, is an assistant director, Latuna Kabiri. Thanks a lot for being with us.
This topic reminded me of those days, some of our friends who lived in Lagos, whenever they return to the East, they tell you, look, I'm into clearing and forwarding.
After a while, it became clearing and backwarding. And then there was also the phenomenon of wharf rats.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been our pleasure bringing you Good Morning Nigeria today. We had three topics, and of course, we had a torrent of tweets also coming in from our viewers on the three topics, but unfortunately, we pressed for time to read those tweets. We appreciate you for sending in your comments. Good Morning Nigeria returns on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, enjoy your day, and of course, have a lovely weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umar. It's been wonderful hosting you this morning. Have a great day.